Hello and welcome into the Wild Tales podcast, the show where animal stories take center stage and the wildest ones are always true. I am your host, Mike Bona. How'd that sound? I tried a little different intro today. I don't know if it'll stick. We'll see. We'll see if I stick with it and do it again in the next episode. I'm not sure. I think I got to get a feel for this. I'm almost a year into this podcast and I still feel like I haven't quite found my groove yet. But if you're enjoying it, I want to keep doing what I'm doing, and hopefully the show is getting better. But let's get into today's guest. Today, I have Bobbi Brink. She is the founder and director of Lions, Tigers, and Bears. That is an accredited exotic animal sanctuary in Alpine, California, just down the Southern California by San Diego. For almost 3 decades, she's been on the front lines of rescuing big cats, bears, and other wild animals from horrific conditions like roadside zoos, backyard breeders, and failed circuses. But before we dive into that, I think it's worth briefly talking about the difference between zoos and sanctuaries, because I think a lot of people don't know the difference, or people think they know the difference, and they might have a misconception about both. So basically, I could probably take a whole episode to talk about this, but there are a lot of key differences. So zoos, especially those that are accredited by organizations like AZA, the American Zoo Association, they're often involved in conservation, education, and breeding programs for endangered species. Whereas sanctuaries like lions, tigers, and bears, they don't breed, buy, sell, or trade animals. Their mission is simply provide a safe, permanent home for animals that can't be released in the wild and maybe do not have a suitable home elsewhere. That is the very basic explanation of zoos and sanctuary. I don't think one is necessarily better than the others. A lot of people think inherently sanctuaries are better than zoos, and I can tell you from firsthand experience, there are good zoos. Hell, there are even some great zoos. There are also some very bad zoos, and the same is true with sanctuaries. There are great sanctuaries, and there are some awful places that claim the title of sanctuary that I would not want to have any animal be a part of, because they are not well suited for the care to fit the animal's needs. So take that with a grain of salt. I could go into a much deeper explanation. If you have any questions, feel free to email the show, wildtalespod@gmail.com, or ask a question on my social media at wildtalespod on Instagram. But before we do that, let's get into today's episode. Bobbi's work is emotional, relentless, and full of stories that will stick with you. So let's jump in. Let's hear what it takes to build a true sanctuary for the animals that need one the most. Ladies and gentlemen, let me welcome Bobbi Brink. All right. So I am very excited and honored to have Bobbi Brink onto the Wild Tales podcast. Bobbi, it's a pleasure to meet you. How are you doing today?
Very nice to meet you. I'm doing great. Thank you.
Great. So you are the founder, correct me if I say anything incorrect, but you are the founder of the Lions, Tigers, and Bears Sanctuary down in San Diego County?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Can you tell me a little bit about the sanctuary and how it got started and what your role is?
Right. So I started Lions, Tigers, and Bears in 2002. I actually started working with the exotic animals in 1990. And I think just after seeing in Texas how badly the animals are treated, I just wanted to make a difference. And so started Lions, Tigers, and Bears, rescuing one animal at a time. And now we have 65 rescued exotic animals. I've traveled well over 300,000 miles. I've driven that many miles myself, moving animals not only to other sanctuaries, but to here in Alpine at our sanctuary. Work side by side with the first responders and get animals out of places they shouldn't be their voice, and we're an education center.
That's fantastic. And this is open to the public. People can come visit the animals and see the sanctuary?
Right. You can come to the sanctuary by appointment. So we have educational visits Tuesday through Saturdays. and you can just sign up online to come out and see us.
Excellent. I'll make sure I have the website posted in the show notes. But is there a particular animal that started the sanctuary?
Well, every animal here has their story because they're all different. But the very first two animals we brought here were Raja and Natasha, and they actually lived in a 6x12 cage together. One had to stand up for the other to turn around for well over 6 years in Alvin, Texas. So a man had bought them as a gift for his wife, and then their marriage didn't work out, and he would not let her take the animals, but he really didn't have the means to care for them. So they lived in this really small enclosure until he finally kind of started getting in a little bit of trouble. And the authorities gave him 30 days to get the animals off of his land. So that's when we said we would take the tigers. So we found a place to put them, which is the property we're on now, and built a small enclosure to get going, and traveled across the country and brought them back here to start lions, tigers, and bears.
And Alpine, California, how did you end up, out of all the places in the country, end up there? It seems like California would be a harder place to start a sanctuary than other states.
Right. Well, I moved to Texas to open my restaurant. And when I was looking for restaurant equipment in the classified ads, that's when I kept seeing lions, tigers, leopards for sale. That was in 1990. And I answered an ad, and the woman, the first ad that I answered, the woman lived in a mobile home on 5 acres. She had 30 breeding big cats and all kinds of babies crawling all over the mobile home floor. And you could just buy one and take it home. So, of course, I didn't buy a tiger or a lion and take it home, but I did start volunteering for her because I wanted to learn to work around the animals. And then I answered more ads. So you would see like more people just selling animals. I've seen tigers for sale in the Walmart parking lot, in the auction houses. And even this particular person that I was working for, who was breeding for reputable places like Disney and Siegfried and Roy at the time, and the guy at the MGM, was still selling to anybody. And a lot of these animals were just ending up in really small places or improper cages. People didn't even have cages. So then when I came back to San Diego in 1998, Mark and I, my husband and I, decided to help some leopards. So the deal was we would build the enclosure, and they would take care of them for life and spay and neuter them. And we didn't even no sooner get the enclosure built, and she had them bred. So that's kind of when we decided I'm going to do it myself and do it right. And then we just started looking for property and started trying to get it going. So it took about 5 or 6 years to get through all the red tape and find a place and get all the paperwork done. And yeah.
That's great. You're definitely making a positive impact for these animals. Now, I know these stories you're telling of selling animals and exotic animals in, parking lots and one ads. I know it's very prevalent in Texas, and you probably find it in any state, but are there steps being done now in that state in particular to kind of curtail this, to kind of protect these animals?
Well, there are, and that's the first thing I discovered, that, as long as the animals had food and water, could stand up and turn around, there was really nothing you could do about it. So when I started Lions, Tigers, and Bears, 28 states, it was perfectly legal to own any animal. And one example, I've worked on the Big Cat Public Safety Act, we call, for 18 years. It took 18 years to get a federal bill through that protects big cats so that they're not used for photo opportunities and overbred and for private ownership. So we're still working on another federal bill now for primates and then for wolves and bears. And in the meantime, we've gone state by state. So, for example, when we got SB 310 through the state of Ohio, which prevented private ownership and made it where you had to have insurance and had to have, proper housing to keep your animals, myself and my team moved over 200 lions, tigers, bears, cougars, and leopards for the state of Ohio out of the state to sanctuary. So we just go state by state and try. It's really hard to get the legislation through that protects the animals. They're still considered property.
That seems it just boggles the mind, just being able to fresh, food and water and be able to turn around. That's just almost nothing for these animals. And I'm sure you hear just absolutely heartbreaking stories from all around the country.
The very first man that I met that had bears, I answered an ad in the paper. I wanted to go see his bears. And I told him I want to learn how to work around bears. So like he gave me the crash course in one day how to take care of the bears. And I started going over there, and if it got to be where if I didn't go over, the bears didn't eat and the bears didn't get any water. I tried to turn that man into anybody I could, the Humane Society, the local sheriff, the animal control, the USDA, anyone who I could get an ear, and I got the same answer. As long as they have food and water, there's nothing we can do. And even explaining that if I didn't go give them food and water, it didn't matter. I followed him because he would load up the bears, and he wouldn't tell you where he was taking them. So I followed him from Southwest Houston up to the Texas Arkansas border to see what he was doing. And he would set up arenas so men could bet. One person, this was in the early 90s, so $1,000 was a lot of money then. One man would pay $1,000 to wrestle the bear, and the rest would bet who was going to win, the bear or the man. So not only, were these bears abused, but they were very dangerous bears because they were taught to wrestle people.
So when you get an opportunity to rescue these animals, what are the changes you see from them going from these abusive, terrible situations to your sanctuary? How do they change their behavior? What's the positive outcome that you notice firsthand?
It's really hard because sometimes they're in such small cages, or they're not even in cages, and where they're living, that's all they know. So here we are, we're catching them up, we're transporting them across the country. They're scared, and then they get a whole new life. So it takes a while. But that's kind of the paycheck, is you get to watch them come out of their shell. So like for one instance, Sugar Bear, one of our bears, he lived in a corn crib, which is about 10 foot around on cement. And he'd probably never been out of that corn crib for like 6-7 years. So when we put him in the hauler to bring him across the country, every time we'd open the door, he seemed fine. He would eat. He was really fine. We bring him home to do the medical. So whenever we bring an animal home, they have to be quarantined. So they have to go through all their medicals. So they'll be in a small enclosure, and that gives them an opportunity to get to know their keepers, get to know the routine, get to know they're going to get food. And he did really well. And then when we take them out to put them in the habitats, they have their own bedroom. So we'll put them in the bedroom first and let them acclimate to that, so they know that's their bedroom before we open the door to the habitat. Well, Sugar Bear did really good till we opened the door to the habitat, and he had freedom, and he wouldn't go out the door, and he would pace back and forth because he was afraid that the door was open. So every day we'd open the door for an hour, and then a week later maybe we'd open the door for 2 hours, and then half the day. And then finally one day he stepped a foot out in the dirt, probably the first time he'd ever touched dirt, and then back in. And then one day we all looked out, and he was sitting outside of his little bedroom in the dirt like a little kid playing in a sandbox. And then just slowly from there, he walked the whole 3-4 acres now. So it just takes time and TLC and patience. But once they come out of their shell, like Sugar Bear, he uses the whole habitat. The girls chase him around. He's in and out of the pool, climbs on the waterfall. Yeah.
That's got to be so rewarding once they reach that point, even though it's a slow process. Once you see them utilizing all that space, you guys just think like, this is why we do it. It's so rewarding. Am I right?
It's exactly why we do it. And it's just amazing, that there's bears or tigers that have never been on dirt.
Now let's go back just so anyone listening understands. You talk about people that have these cats, these lion cubs, whatever, and they have taken like fairs or whatever and set up booths where you can take a photo with them. And it's so tempting if you don't know the background of these animals. I can see why people would want to be like, yeah, I'll pay whatever money to get a picture with the baby tiger. But why would you want to discourage that? What
I guess you kind of have explained, in your way to why, but basically, why do you encourage people not to participate in these events?
Right. I know. Like, who wouldn't want to hold and touch a baby lion or a baby tiger or a baby leopard? And it's just so sad because these people, they have learned, that they can just breed and breed and breed and breed. And we know of people who breed 200 to 400 tigers a year for nothing more than for people to hold the animal and get their picture taken, and they're disposable after, by the time they're 4 to 6 months old, and they have to continue to breed babies to keep their business open, and all the babies go out the back door. So the lucky ones will get to go to a sanctuary like mine, or they disappear. A lot of them are sold for their body parts, they're killed, they're sold off as a pet, they're living in a little teeny cage now in somebody's backyard. It's really sad. And I think a lot of times the people lie. They'll tell the person who's paying to have their picture taken, this is conservation, or the animal was rescued. It's disgusting, and it's for nothing more than profit.
Right, it's terrible, and hundreds of cats a year, potentially for one breeder, and you have limited space in your sanctuary. There's only so many sanctuaries in the country, so it's unimaginable what happens to the majority of these cats. So, if you can encourage anyone that's listening to this show, if you encounter that situation, spread word to your friends and family. Like, just say no and see if you can put these people out of business, so they have no incentive to breed
Yeah,
these
and now
cats.
now they're doing it to so many other exotic animals because now it's illegal, and in the United States it's illegal for the big cats, but they're still doing it, and they'll still do it with the small cats and sloths and foxes and lemurs and any animal they can get their hands on. But then the same exact thing happens to those animals. It's yeah. So don't do it. Please don't get your photos taken.
Yes, please. What is the incentive for you to focus on, like, majority cats and bears for your sanctuary? I know you have some other animals there, but that seems to be your focus. Am
Right.
I right?
Our main focus is big cats and bears, but we actually have 19 different species of animals here that we've rescued. So I think just lions, tigers, and bears is the main animals that we work on, but we do help all animals.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Is there, uh, of all the animals you have, is there one that's especially, kind of touching to your heart because of their story?
Oh wow, there's so many. I do have a leopard that I'm kind of her person, and she was rescued at 3 weeks old, and she was just so scared of everything, just backing up in the corner, and it was really, we had to bottle feed her, and it was really hard to touch her because she was just, even at that young age, she was so scared and so aggressive from being so scared. I have my most scars from that cat, but she's 21 years old, so I bottle raised her from 3 weeks old, and she's 21 years old now. So yeah, and she's definitely, I'm her person. When I come around, she acts different. And she runs up to me. She definitely knows who I am, but she's probably a special one. And yeah,
That's
I think the
amazing.
ones that come in the most beat up, because a lot of times these animals have never had any medical. So I think the ones that come in the most beat up are the ones that you really get, you know, the most attracted to because you spend the most time nursing them back to health.
Right, I didn't even think about that. The physical transformation that some of these animals must go through has got to be
A lot
incredible.
of a lot of metabolic bone disease because people don't know how to feed them, and they have really high calcium needs. And if the breeder will tell them to feed cat food or rice or something stupid like that, and then you can't get it back. It's really hard to get their
Oh,
health.
um,
We have the same problem working with the first responders. A lot of times they go in and confiscate the animals. And so when they bring them to us, we of course have no idea what they were eating. So they're pretty much getting 100% diet change, which is with the babies is really hard on their guts, really hard on them.
how do you've been doing this for decades now? What's continues to be your motivation throughout all these years?
definitely the animals. I still, love, getting the opportunity to help animals and to help people because, I'm going to need a replacement soon. So teaching all the young people to work around the animals and, watching them do their internships here and become a veterinarian or a ranger or, go work as a keeper someplace else. And that's pretty good too.
How are you still finding animals like in today? Are people like reaching out to you, or are you still doing like kind of investigative, you know, out in?
Usually now it's the first responders that reach out to us and we literally work with them to help them go in and get them out. Because, if you think about it, your local sheriff isn't trained how to go get a tiger out of an apartment.
I
Or,
can only imagine a sheriff's reaction walking into an apartment and seeing a tiger.
yeah. So yeah, we help a lot. So a lot, and sometimes the owners might call. They're in over their head, or we just know of animals that are in trouble, and we're just kind of waiting for all the legal mumbo jumbo so we can get the animals out of there. It takes a really long time sometimes.
I bet. What's the I mean, when you encounter an animal like that, you're trying to rescue. I mean, what are some of the steps you have to take for your own safety and the animal safety to get them to a safe environment?
Right. Well, sometimes they won't be in a safe enough cage where we can dart to get the animal out. So a lot of times we've literally got to build something, or coax them into a transfer cage. Sometimes we can't even get a transfer cage up to where they are. So we do have no choice but to dart. So we just kind of got to work through every single rescue. But then, you've also got to have permits to cross the state line. So you've got to map out your route. The authorities got to be notified if you're going through certain states and things. Got to have the right paperwork to cross the state lines, things like that. So there's
Yeah,
a lot of coordination and, they're heavy. So if you're going to knock down a lion or a tiger or a bear, you might need 6 to 8 people to pick that animal up to get it. Once you've got them knocked out, pick them up on a tarp to get them in the transfer cages. And we always have to have a veterinarian on site. A lot of times we're lucky enough to get to do a basic physical right there in the field if we've got them knocked out, because we know 99% of the time they haven't had any medical care.
I
So
bet.
we
Yeah.
can get a good look.
What is the largest animal you have currently?
I think our biggest animal right now would be our grizzly bear, Rocky. He's a retired entertainment animal. He literally lived in a less than 300 square foot cage on concrete for about 19 years. Really
Oh,
sad.
poor
Yeah.
Rocky. How old is he now?
I think he's about 24 or 25, and he's got a really nice habitat and a nice pool and waterfall, and he's fun to watch. He loves to dig holes and sit in his hole and go in his pool and tack his toys and drag trees around. He loves to drag trees around.
I bet, man. I bet he's fun to watch. I love bears. Uh, I mean, what were some of the challenges in starting the sanctuary? I mean, how many naysayers do you have telling you that this can't be done? How much perseverance did you have to push through to kind of achieve this goal?
Oh, that was a lot. In the beginning, like nobody really understood, what we were doing. We did have one neighbor here that didn't we thought didn't want the animals here, but come to find out she really wanted the property. Was the whole
Oh,
ended up being the whole why she was causing all the problems. But it took from about 1998 till about 2003 to get all the way through all the red tape and get going. Yeah. And, now we've just worked really hard in our community. So we have really good relationships with all our neighbors and the local chambers and all the local authorities. And we've just worked really hard for that.
how have perceptions changed we're talking about almost 30 years. Perceptions change either for positive or negatively towards, I guess, the sanctuary and animals as a whole. And
I think a little bit more positive. I think when I first started this, nobody really knew this was happening. Like everyone thought, oh, the animals live at the circus or they live at the zoo. And, the biggest question I would always get is, well, why don't you send these animals to the zoo? Well, the zoo won't take these rescued animals. They don't fit in their species survival plan for breeding. and they actually sometimes have surplus animals themselves. So they can't really take from the breeding, they can't really take these animals in. So I think it took a long time for people to really see the need and know that the exotic animal trade is second to drugs and weapons and human trafficking in our country. Like a $22 billion industry. So I don't think people realize how prevalent wildlife trafficking is and how much these animals could use our help. But I
Uh,
think that's kind of coming about over time, and social media is helping with that. And social media also exposes the bad that people do. So they can't get away with as much as they used to get away with the animals going out the back door and disappearing and like they used to be able to.
that's so true. Going back to you're talking about the fate of these tigers, their lives after being used for photos as cubs and going into like the animal products being sold in the street. A lot of people picture animal products being sold like in Asian countries, but it's very prevalent right here in the United States in our own backyard that people aren't aware of. But I think because of social media, like you said, people are becoming more and more aware of that fact.
Yep. Especially, where we are in San Diego, we're right by the Long Beach port and the border. And we've got a few tigers here that have been, compensated coming right over our borders and right in our port.
Yes. We're coming towards the end. Do you have like a message that you want to give to listeners, how they can help you personally, or just any animals that may be in need of some help?
Well, you can always help us, lionstigersandbears.org, by coming out or donating or volunteering. But the biggest thing is, don't support these people that are doing the trafficking, and to only go to like accredited sanctuaries, GFAS accredited sanctuaries like Lions, Tigers, and Bears, just so that you know that you're not supporting the trafficking.
Yeah, and just in general, if you see something, say something. If you see an animal that you think might be in a perilous situation, who could you contact depending on what state you're in?
You can call myself, or you can call your local U.S. Fish and Wildlife, because now it's U.S. Fish and Wildlife that would be more in charge. That changed with the Big Cat Public Safety Act. But yeah, you can call here and we can kind of guide you depending on the situation, what's the best thing to do. And we might even be able to help. It took a long time, even with Tiger King. That I have known them since the 90s. And you would tell people what was going on, and they would look at us like we're crazy, like, oh, that can't possibly be happening. But it obviously was. And it came down to, we actually helped move the last 70 of the Tiger King cats. We have two of them here, Jem and Zoe, are here.
That's great. Well, I appreciate the work you're doing. I appreciate you coming on the podcast and telling your stories. And yeah, for all my listeners, please visit the website. I have personally not visited Lion, Tigers, and Bears, but you're just a few hours down the road, so I'll try to make an effort in the near future. I'd love to see your facility and meet you.
You should come see, because it really is very beautiful here. And we have a little Airbnb on the property where you can stay the night. And it's just an incredibly, we're right at the base of the Cuyamaca Mountains, 4,000 feet. So we get just the little bit of the four seasons, and it really is really beautiful here.
That
Really
sounds
beautiful.
great. That sounds like an amazing opportunity. I mean, if you have an opportunity to sleep in an Airbnb and listen to lions roar in the middle of the night, I would not pass up that opportunity. It's amazing.
Well, thank you, Mike. Thank
Oh,
you.
thank you, Bobbi. Take care.
Okay.
I want to give a big thanks to Bobbi Brink for coming on to the podcast. She had some great stories. She's doing some great work caring for these animals that just come from horrific situations. So yeah, do what you can. If you see an animal that you think is not in a proper situation to be cared for properly, contact Fish and Wildlife. Reach out to Bobbi Brink. Her organization's email address is liontigersandbears.org. Is it .org? Oh my goodness, I should have this information on hand. Yes, it is .org. lionstigersandbears.org. How she got that domain, I don't know. It seemed like that'd be a popular one, especially for maybe some Wizard of Oz fans, but she got it. So if you want to know more about the organization or how to contact Bobbi, Lions and Tigers and Bears.org. Yeah, if you're in a situation where you see someone selling photo opportunities with any exotic animal, whether it be a cat or a bear or a primate or a sloth, I know it's tempting. It is an unbelievable opportunity, and it's so hard to say no, but you have to think about the welfare of that animal. What's going to happen to it after you take that photo? Is it going to go back and live a life of luxury and care, or is it just going to be tossed to the side to make room for the next cute baby that can make money for its owner, taking photos with guests at the next roadside zoo or circus or fair or wherever you see these? Um, so it is heartbreaking to think about where some of these animals come from, but it's also inspiring to think of the work that Bobbi's doing and where these animals end up. So thank you for listening. Check out more on my Instagram at Wild Tales Pod, or email the show if you have any questions or comments at Wild Tales Pod. Sorry, wildtalespod@gmail.com. That's Tales, Tails. And please recommend the show to a friend if you're enjoying it, and write a review, give a 5-star rating, do all the good stuff. Let's get this show out there to more ears so people can hear it and enjoy these wonderful stories. So until next time, stay wild, my friends.